It got to a point where it was like I really blocked the number because I felt uncomfortable just like turning it down and felt bad saying like no and flaking and canceling and all that stuff.
So, how old was this person?
She was probably like 50, like probably like early to mid 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, but she also looked like she took pretty good care of herself, so she could have been older, and just looked good for her age. But I mean, it was no.
Welcome to NurseSpeak. I am your host, EB from Nurse Life RN. Every week, we are going to look at stories that you send in to see what it's truly like to be a nurse right now. For this first episode, I have two guests with me. I'll let them introduce themselves.
All right, I'm Tony Tone, groovytonee on Instagram with the 2 E's at the end, no underscores, none of that. I'm Tony. Won't give you my last name or license number, but I work in a trauma ICU in a pretty rough area in LA, like Linwood, Watts, Compton area.
All right. I am Alexa. I work in the psychiatric field, started with all eating disorders, and now I'm just general psych.
All right. So I asked them here today after I posted the prompt last week asking for patient interactions outside the hospital. I asked you guys to send in stories about times that you have given in to that feeling that we all have at some point where you have a patient, you feel kind of close to them, or you spend a long time taking care of them, you start feeling invested, and it's time for discharge, and you just want to know what's going on with them after they leave. And so we asked you guys to send us stories of when you followed through with that urge and given your personal information to a patient or met up with a patient after they've been discharged. And I'm going to read those stories, and we'll just give Tony and Alexis a chance to react to some of these. So let's get started. The first story. As a young ER male nurse, age 23, I was taking care of a boy aged around 16 with an upper respiratory infection. He was accompanied by his mother only, who was average looking to me, but nothing outstanding.
Brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys can go ahead and chime in throughout this story. Don't feel like you have to keep quiet for the whole thing. After treating her son to some simple ibuprofen, her mother thanked me over and over and said she hoped he turned out like me, a young, handsome, caring man. ... Strange but sure. I'll take the compliment and move on to my next assignment. After discharge, a technician brought me a napkin that was left on the counter with a name and a number scribbled on it, and the words, "For my son's nurse." Every coworker was notified immediately, and gossip spread through the department. I told everyone I threw the napkin away and just laughed it off. Little did they know, I was a young, naive male nurse
23 years old
who decided to keep that napkin and give that number a late night, "Hey, you up" text.
No.
Oh, you hit his mom? Oh, no.
After a few exchanges, later I was treated to a mediocre Mexican restaurant with the mother of my patient and a house visit for some late night festivities. Multiply that times 2, and that would be the relationship I had with a family member of a patient. Not my proudest moment in life, but we all learn from our triumphs and tribulations,
but
right?
did he really learn from it since he said times 2? Did you really learn?
It takes 2 times to learn.
Okay, the first one was a sample, second one. Okay,
Sample. No.
Yeah, you definitely have to hide something like that from your coworkers, though.
For sure. Sometimes your coworkers will push you into stuff like that, though.
I work with kids, so
The patient was 16, so it was the patient's mom.
Right. True. Yeah. Maybe it's different with guys though, because
I think it is.
Yeah,
I think it is for
females,
sure.
if there's a patient's family member or something hitting on us, typically we're like, ooh, gonna stay out of that room. Like, yeah.
No, see, my coworker. I had a coworker, and I actually had to confront him about this. I'm like, bro, stop like volunteering me to like these patients or their family members. It's like, yeah, I know I'm single and everything, but I don't have a problem in that department. Like, and literally, like like it happened multiple times. Like literally, we would be out, and he was like, oh yeah, dude, the patient in 13. Their sister's looking at you. She stares at you every time she comes out, to the nursing station and everything. I'm going to tell her you're single. Or I told her you're single, and it's really like kind of got me into some shit before. Like literally, like I'm talking about people find me on Instagram, all of that, you know, and just come around, call the unit, asking stupid questions and shit. Like,
That sounds like your coworker is bored though. I've never been invested enough to like.
Yeah, that seems a little bit of stirring the pot around there.
It's funny. I was about to say that. All he does is stir the pot, and it's not only with like situations like that. It's with drama at work and everything. Like he stirs the pot.
How many guys do you work with?
It's not too many. It's about him. It's about, I'm not gonna drop no names, you know, but it's about 4. It's about 4.
Okay, that's a decent amount for one unit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to actually.
They're not on the same shift though, are they?
No, so my ICU is split up into 3 pods. So it's like you can have like 4 like male nurses working at night, and everybody will be in like a different pod and everything. But I mean, they like the way they do it is they try to keep at least like one guy, you know, in every pod. You know.
Yeah. All right, we can move on to the next story. Story number 2. I was a contract nurse working about 60 miles from home. Had a patient with a history of IVDA who was being treated for endocarditis. We developed a great working relationship that became a friendship after a few weeks. Patient was transferred to a different hospital for valve replacement surgery. Numbers exchanged. A few more weeks go by. Friendship blossomed into more flirty, romantic thing. I was there for him during some of his toughest moments of life. We shared a lot with each other, always being open and honest. He told me that prior to his drug use, he had served in the Army, went on to have a great IT career. He did well for himself. He had his own place, worked out twice a day, did CrossFit, powerlifting. He was healthy. One day, he chose the needle, and for 2 years, he didn't look back until he got sick. And that part, do people ever go straight to the needle? Like I just
No.
But
I mean,
I don't know.
Every
It's-
patient that you have that will always tell you, like, well, before I
Like,
did this.
yeah.
well, before I had my shit
Wad
together.
and
Yeah.
heroin. Right, like I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Where was I? He was healthy, and one day he chose the needle, and for 2 years he didn't look back until he got sick, and that's when we met. He tells me I saved him. He spent a total of 12 weeks in the hospital. When it came time for his discharge, he had nowhere to go, so I told him to stay with me, and he did. Fast forward to 2020. We've shared amazing times together, and some tough times as well, but overall, a strong relationship. We have a dog. We're currently house hunting. He has a great job, and we're living a healthy life. Our biggest adventure together starts officially in June when we welcome our son into the world.
Wow. They took it they took it the whole
All
way.
the
Right?
way.
Yeah.
They took it the whole way.
Okay.
Ooh, that's heavy.
It's a good story. It's
That's
like
deep.
wholesome.
No, that's I mean, hey, number one, I don't think you should judge people. I mean, if you have a drug, you have a drug abuse problem, like I look at that like a sickness. I don't necessarily look at
Definitely.
it as like you're a bad person.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, I don't know about dating you and having a kid with you. Like that's kind of crazy. Like I like to separate. Like I don't really like to get too involved with people that I work with, just because like it kind of opens the door for like a mess, and especially when this is stuff at your job and stuff like this can come back to you.
Yeah.
But
Big time. And I would have the fear in that situation of, right, something goes wrong and you've been the primary caretaker, like one of the caretakers on this patient's team. I would have a concern that immediately if something went wrong, there'd be reports against you. There'd be things like that. Like I'm very, very scared of that. So plus you don't, and again, like addiction is an illness and it's, it's a very high recidivism rate and people returning to it. It's very hard to get out of addiction.
Yeah.
So I think I would be very scared taking on the responsibility of feeling almost like a caretaker while I'm at home as well.
Yeah.
You do your work and then you have to make sure you help this person maintain sobriety. And I think that would be a very difficult situation for me to be in.
that could be taxing. Like
For sure.
That's like that's
it
really
seems-
like you're taking your work home.
It seems like a high risk relationship.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's why the ending is so surprising.
Yes.
that
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, like I'm happy for
her.
happy
Like,
for them for sure. But
congratulations.
yeah.
But
Yeah, when we were trying to think of what to call this episode or like what to label it, what kept coming in my mind was like the good, the bad, the ugly of like, because some of these stories, like it does not end like this. Like,
that's the good. That sounds
We're
like
just
the good.
scraping the surface right now.
yeah. But we'll go to the next one.
had a kid with him? No, that's great. No, listen, because that's like no matter what, if you have a kid, like I understand like there's a relationship involved, but this is a whole, you are conjoined. Like this is a life. This is somebody that's gonna grow up and hopefully be your age. Like so, outside of their childhood, which is that person's like structure and their base, like literally, like somebody has to build their life off of that and continue. You know what I'm saying? Forward with their life off of all of your shit. Like if it went messy, like imagine what that would be like as the kid. You know, like imagine the type of shit she or he would talk about at the dinner table. We're talking about. You know what I'm saying? The other parent, like, come on now. It's crazy.
Yeah. And you know, she does say we had some tough times. So I'm assuming this summary of it is the highlights.
Right.
So,
right.
Okay. So the next story. Many nurses within hospital units have frequent flyers. So we like to call them. Patients who come in often get to know the staff. Staff gets to know them. I've had an on and off patient-nurse relationship with a patient for over 5 years. Reason being on and off was for a couple of years there I refused to have them as a patient. After years of taking care of this patient, dodging flirtatious advances, sticking firm to the nurse-patient code, I got too comfortable with them and let them into my personal life. Only through conversations while they were admitted, I let my guard down, started to get friendly, and lo and behold, it bit me in the butt. They eventually crossed the line and used their powers as a local government, as a local government official to look up information about the person I was dating at the time.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was livid, and rightfully so. So I confided in my coworkers, who thankfully stuck by my side, and would always make sure I didn't get assigned this patient when they came in. I had zero intention of reporting this person, as I knew they were not someone I wanted to mess with. I didn't want the hassle, and honestly, I didn't think my facility would have done anything given this patient's status in the community.
Wow.
Shitty, but that's the world we live in. Fast forward a few years, the patient is being admitted more and more frequently, a chronic disease slowly chipping away at their quality of life. One shift, the patient got agitated with their nurse, and there was no other choice but for me to take over. I did feel bad for the patient giving their decline, but I was still holding on to a grudge. Nonetheless, I was professional and caring as usual, but curt. After a couple of shifts taking care of them, they eventually apologized, mouthing an "I'm sorry" in front of their spouse who wasn't paying attention. Yes, they were married and also had a side piece. All the staff knew, and at this point, so did the spouse. Their business, not mine. I did forgive him, and our patient-nurse relationship grew from that point as they were admitted more and more frequently. Eventually, we got back to being friendly. They confided their anxieties to me on several occasions, and I helped them through it. One shift, they were going to be discharged the next day, and they asked me about my days off. I confirmed that I was indeed off for a few days. After, they had a business trip to go on, just for a day and overnight stay, and they invited me. I declined at first. This wasn't the first time they'd offered to take me places.
Some swinger shit. I already know what's going on with this.
Oh, no.
It's about to get real raunchy.
I declined at first. This wasn't the first time they had offered to take me out to places, but I got curious and started asking questions. Would I have my own room? What was the expectation? And I also made sure to let them know that if I went, it would be totally platonic. They answered everything right. Eventually, I accepted a day/overnight trip, all expensive paid. Fuck it. I enjoyed the spa, had an amazing dinner, and thoroughly enjoyed being eye candy to the general public. It was a really good time. It was a really good time, no regrets. They didn't try anything either. Our relationship remains intact. No one knows, and no one can ever know. Yeah.
It's uncomfortable. It's like you don't understand boundaries either. Like even to protect yourself. Like, come on.
It sounds like there's some kind of mental pathology going on with this guy. I don't. My assumption
he's a government
is that
official.
It's a government official.
That told us everything, right? My assumption, the way it sounds, is kind of that it's in a psychiatric setting. Maybe that's because I'm biased, but it almost sounds like that to me. So, like, you have someone who stalked someone you were dating and then go out with that. That's scary as shit.
Yeah, like
I would assume I'd end up like in a tub with a kidney missing.
For real, if you can look up somebody I'm talking to, what can you look up about me?
What do you already know about me? Yeah,
exactly.
My address, like,
But you would think
scary.
But you would think that since it's like a public official, that they would probably be like, smarter about that, because I mean, your reputation is on the line too.
Well, I mean, they clearly weren't worried about it. And
they can pay their way out of any trouble.
Yeah.
Well, and also,
and the connections they already have, will get them out.
Well, you see her reaction to it. She was like, "That's the reaction people usually have when something like that happens. It's like, oh, I don't want to even deal with it."
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely not the first time he's looked up someone's.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that she asked those questions of like, is this going to be expected of me? But like, and she said that he answered all the things correctly. Well, of course he's going to.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
but I mean, she also said that they didn't try or make any like advances like that.
But she trusted him, which is like God that he's like trustworthy. But you also can't assume that of every situation this.
Then my question is, what is his motivation? Like, what is he getting out of that relationship?
Oh, I mean, it's also the attempt. Like he might be like, I wouldn't try anything, but then also kind of like, if we can at least get on this trip, who knows?
Right. What can come next?
But
and then that becomes a very slippery slope of, well, I've accepted all these things, and do I say yes again? Because
it's like you nix yourself though. Like you kind of put yourself in that situation
in like a bad But at the same time too, with some of these stories, you got to take some of it with like a grain of salt, because like, I'm not convinced that if something did happen, like no one's gonna write that.
And then guess what?
And guess what I did?
Okay, so something actually did happen.
Right.
But I can't imagine a scenario. Actually, I'm trying to think of a scenario that would make me meet up with a patient after, like anywhere in real life after, and the only times I've done it was like only in like sad situations, like someone died and their family invited me to like.
I did that one time, and I ended up having to like block the lady's number, like, and it wasn't anything. It was nothing like sexual. It was nothing along those lines at all. But it was just like a family. I don't know. You have those families that you end up getting very close with, and then the patient ended up passing away, and then I gave her my contact information. A doctor at my job gave him their contact too, but she was like, "Hey, I got these gowns from the hospital still. Come pick them up, and also we're having a viewing. Come view the body. I really appreciate like the work that you put in, And I went there, but it was just crazy. She was really on some super, super religious like type of shit, and she was like trying to like bring me to church. I feel like a terrible person for like not going and everything.
And I was like, Jesus.
She would literally like try to like bring, like she would literally like hit me up every single day. Oh yeah, we're having this in my church. I want you to come. I want you, to tell your story. I want this, that, a third. And it was just it got to a point where it was like I really blocked the number because I felt uncomfortable just like turning it down, and felt bad saying like no, and flaking and canceling and all that stuff. So,
how old was this person?
She was probably like 50, like probably like early to mid 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, but she also looked like she took pretty good care of herself, so she could have been older, and just looked good for her age. But I mean, it was no. Listen. It was I wasn't. No, I'm saying. I mean, but if you're gonna ask me that question, I'm gonna answer truthfully.
He's like, she could have been older and looked really.
She kept herself up. But no, it just got like, I don't know. I felt like she was trying to adopt me, like kind of, like in a weird way, know. And it was just like, like, cool, thank you, but it's kind of weird. Like I felt like, even though it wasn't like something sexual, I still felt as if it was like, in the back of my mind, I felt like it was an inappropriate relationship to have.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, this next story will be sort of relatable.
Oh, man.
Okay, here we go. So when I was still in uni nurse, I was taking care of a patient in the ICU. This young woman, I believe 25 or 26 at the time, was in the SICU after receiving a bowel transplant. I took care of her at her very sickest, vented, paralyzed, and sedated. I would always talk to her through it. One day, I believe I wasn't even working on the unit anymore. I came to visit her and she immediately recognized my voice. We were both crying and she thanked me for everything. She was awake now, is sitting up, etc., doing much better. I gave her my personal email to stay in touch. Now I wish I hadn't done that because it turned into her, I think, wanting much more of a relationship than I did. She is very religious. I stress that because there's like 10 Y's behind very. So whenever I would meet up with her, I believe I met up with her once or twice for coffee and visit her a couple of times in the hospital. She had a lot of complications, no surprise. She would want to pray with me and ask me to come to church with her. I always felt so torn because I did feel a lot of love and compassion for her because of the strength and all she had been through. But I definitely felt like the friendship, or at least her expectations, crossed the line, and I didn't know what to do because I didn't want to hurt her by establishing boundaries. But I felt like I was in the wrong by first giving out my personal information. But I was a brand new nurse and I didn't know any better. Anyways, I think she did eventually get the hint because she doesn't reach out much anymore, but I do feel terrible because I wanted to support her and be there for her, but as a friend, it just felt wrong.
No, that's kind of similar.
Yeah,
very
did
similar.
You write this? Is this you?
You sent it in.
I was gonna say that. That's tough. Like, you know, and it kind of makes you question who you are as a person. It kind of makes you question if you're like a bad person for feeling those type of ways, you know, like. But I mean, at the end of the day, you do have to take yourself into consideration. You do have to respect, you know, and acknowledge boundaries. You know, like there are certain things that you don't. Just because somebody else, you know, like is all for that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to accept it, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad person for kind of like not really, you know, being very open to it and like being very receptive to it. You know?
Well, I think that's the hard part is like after you do something where you kind of, you're the one who kind of like he said he gave her his personal email. So then later on when it started getting weird, he felt like it was his fault. Like he was like, how do I reel this back in and be like, actually. So I don't know, reading, it's actually like a beautiful story because, you know, I mean, everyone who's worked in the ICU, you have vented patients and, you know, just the idea of this dude talking to, like you hear those stories about patients when they come out from being intubated or you take them off sedation and they tell you that they could hear everything the whole time.
Everything.
Not all the patients. Some patients have no clue where the fuck they are or like what's happened but some people like him saying that he walked in and she recognized his voice. Like that is one of those feelings of nursing that like when you experience that you have that like I don't even know what the why we do this feeling. I don't even know what to even call it. Yeah. But then you see where the whole story goes that he's kind of like, okay.
And it's hard too because when patients are in your care, they're in a really, really vulnerable, oftentimes shitty place, right? Yeah. So like you are their hope and you are their strength in that moment. And it feels like when that bond is cut off, sometimes they don't want to let go because they haven't found that hope and strength on their own. Mm-hmm. And maybe you feel like you're going to remove that from them. And what if they get worse? Or what if they can't succeed without it or whatever? So it is a very weird dynamic. And like you said, with the phone number, trying to reel it in after is hard. Yeah. Really, really hard once that's already been out there. But you gotta just establish the boundary right away.
Yeah. No, even as we're talking about this, I'm like remembering a very similar scenario. Yeah. And it was like, I think the patient was probably like only 24, 25, but she had a seizure when she was driving, got into a car accident, was intubated, a bunch of broken bones. And then when she was extubated, she had like all these anxiety issues. And it was like getting her up to do, like she became the patient that was like kind of a lot for everyone. The family was very anxious. And I was a traveler at this place. And she became one of those patients that you just get like, she was in the ICU, but she was doing well enough. And like, those are the kind of patients you get when you're a traveler because no one really trusts you with that much. They give you like because they don't know you. So yeah. So, and one thing I've always prided myself on is that like I will like my bedside manner with patients. Like I talk a lot of trash in the memes, but like that is not my behavior. Like I'm very like I will put up with I will put up with like difficult patients. Like and so just out of doing that and stuff, I'm sure, especially the mom noticed that like I was like if she asked me something 50 times, I never act annoyed. I go in there with the same like, oh, hey. And I know she could tell that everyone at that point on that unit was probably sick of her. But by the time it was time for discharge, between the mom and the daughter, like I become that nurse that like they felt that connection to. And they found me on Facebook and they messaged me updates all the time. But luckily, like I don't go on Facebook, but like
No, that's your excuse, huh?
but no, really, I remember the first time I saw that they had found me, like my feeling was, oh shit. It wasn't like, it wasn't because I didn't want to keep up with like her progress. It was just kind of like I knew it'd be weird because I knew what their family was like. So because they would like ask about me when I wasn't at work.
Oh yeah.
Once you get to that point, you're like,
whoa, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. You know a family really likes you if like they're asking about you on your off days to see if you're coming in.
When the next time you're going to be in is.
Or like when holidays come around and they come and they drop off like you're the only one that they drop like a gift bag off for.
Which can completely turn everyone against you.
No, 1,000%. And it's just like
like someone got gourmet cookies and they gave the rest of us a fruit cake. You're like, this is bullshit.
Yeah, or I've had patients give me gift cards for like $100. I'm just kind of like,
damn.
I was like, you went hard.
But that's one of those things where it's like you have to give it to like the unit and stuff. Especially because sometimes it's like other people like hear them giving it to you. There's no.
You can't slip that in your scrubs.
You definitely got some haters too that you work with.
I can't. Most hospitals have like a policy on like
it's like under $10, right? Well, most usually.
Yeah.
I feel terrible because I don't know what our policy is.
No one knows until something happens.
Even if someone writes me like a handwritten art piece, I leave it in the nurse's station. I'm like so scared of taking anything. They'll like draw a picture of me. I'm like, tuck it into a cabinet.
You're like,
somewhere.
It's me though.
Like, why is this picture of her?
I'm so anxious about that.
I feel like that's generally nursing though. I feel like a lot of us are just kind of like we do a lot of playing it safe because we're like, I don't know what the rules are on this.
Yes, exactly.
I feel like you would have like different stories depending on where you work at too. Like kind of depending on like the socioeconomic status of like the people and like your patient base and stuff. Like
for sure.
Me, obviously, like where I'm at, we're probably not gonna have somebody sit there try to buy me a car for for doing good with them. But say you
but if anyone does want to buy me a car,
straight up, you know what I'm saying? I like the new Audi e-tron, but it's like, but I could definitely imagine, like, say for instance, like Cedars, you know what I'm saying, like with all of those people that go there,
right. Yeah, and I know a lot of people who will meet patients at like hospitals like Cedars and end up doing like private duty nursing for them after they get like that's a good side gig hookup.
Would you do something like that though?
I don't know. Like I've done home care nursing before. I just don't like going into people's houses. Like it's like
you're 1,000%. This is not a neutral ground. Like this is 1,000%.
You're in their turf.
Like this is your space.
And I just once I enter that space, I get like weirdly germophobic. Like I was like, I don't know what. It's like I don't know what you do at home. Like people are weird at home.
Can I dry my hands on your towel? Or?
A couple of weeks ago, we had that poll about if people wash their hands at home.
Oh yeah.
And this is on my Instagram with primarily medical healthcare personnel, and the numbers were shocking. A ton of people don't wash their hands at home, and I'm just like, I'm not eating anything you guys bring in. But I also realize like I'm a bit germophobic. Like I'm not a neat person. This is people mix up the difference. Like my place isn't spotless, but like
you're messy, not dirty.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's a completely different thing. But
also, coronavirus, wash your hands, please.
Straight up.
More like flu virus, all right?
Yeah, I know.
One of my friends sent me a text at 2:30 in the morning that asked, hey, how serious is the coronavirus? Literally today. I was like, are you up at 2:30 thinking about the coronavirus right now?
I shouldn't have said
go
anything.
to sleep.
How bad is it?
Well, that's the thing, though, is like, it's hard to tell. Like, is it serious? I don't know. From the news, it seems like it, but...
Right.
It's like, we had this like special like mandated like education and everything. We had like this little PPR class that we had to go to, like, and then you really put on like
the PAPR and
the PAPR and and it's
which we joke about this shit all the time with like the N95 mask. Like everyone's just trying to get out of that test. Like you go in there.
Yeah, you don't
like
want them spraying more of that nail polish remover into your mouth. You're like, yep, it's great. Never
I
worked
taste
better.
it. I mean, I don't taste it.
They're like, it doesn't work. They're like, it doesn't work with a beard. I have like a full beard. I'm like, no, I don't smell anything.
Oh man, that's
they try to get you shaved.
The beard thing, yeah, that definitely. They always say, "Oh, you should definitely take it off." You know, like, but
no, UCLA will not let you, like, if you come in to do your class for it and you're not clean shaved, they will send you home.
Like clean, like clean shaved,
crazy ones that cover like.
Yeah, that's the papper. I had to come back and do that instead, but I try to sneak in with just the N95 mask.
Yeah. Okay.
With the papper, they told me like you could actually, if you have a beard, you can use that instead of the, you know.
Yeah.
It has like a little fan in the back.
Yeah, exactly. They got the fan that goes to the top.
It feels like you're like in a spacesuit.
Yeah,
like you're a stormtrooper.
Yeah. Not as cool as a stormtrooper though.
No, I posted. I got in there when we were in the training. Of course, I took a picture and posted it on my Instagram, and people were sending me message after message after message, like, "Oh, bro, be safe. Oh, that shit is coming for you in California too. You gonna get that shit."
My God.
You know what I'm saying? It's crazy.
Okay, I apologize for that.
All right, I got the next story here. So I was an Army nurse. I had a patient on my floor who had recently been shot in Afghanistan a few times. I had him as a patient in the morning and then discharged him in the afternoon. He was so cute. I could tell he had the hots for me.
He was so cute.
Yeah,
those bullet holes. I DC'd him and gave him my Snapchat. He wrote to me.
Which is a quality piece of information. To give to someone.
Well, yeah, if someone gives me their Snapchat, I'm just like, oh, okay.
You already know. They try to
Okay. I'm like, okay, cool. Wink, wink. I DC'd him and gave him my Snapchat. He wrote me and we went on a date that night. Hit it off great. Like I was in love with this guy. I packed his wounds in my living room. We moved.
Oh, wow. We're gonna do this dressing change education again, you know, at home, you know what I'm saying?
It sounds somehow like a very intimate date activity though. Like, let me pack your wounds. I'm imagining the scene from like
he got shot
an onion sauteing in the kitchen.
But it's like, where's home if he got shot in Afghanistan?
Well, usually they like airlift them to
Germany.
Okay,
if they're in Germany and then
you're like a military.
My parents, because it's like, I'm like, what? You know, like my parents were in the military. So
he's like, so they looked outside and could see Germany.
You know, so it's like, what is your partner in Germany? Or, you know,
she's missing important details.
She had him in the morning and discharged him in the afternoon. So I'm assuming it wasn't
he probably.
It wasn't like right after it happened type of thing. Is my assumption.
But I mean,
they met up on really, Snap or like contact each other via Snapchat and then said, "Come over to my living room. Let's do your wounds."
But I mean, think about it. Like you get shot. Like I mean, you worked in the trauma center before, and it's like, you know, you get the gunshot wounds and all that stuff. Like. I don't know. It's like whatever. I'm thinking you need to the story. Okay, cool.
But listen. Okay, real quick though. When you have them and like, if someone comes in with a gunshot and you work ICU, you're not seeing them in any state where like, it's like if you have them med surge and they're about to leave. Yeah, that's when you have time to form a romantic relationship.
Yeah. Well, also, she had him in the morning and discharged him in the afternoon, so she didn't have time to form a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
She said it was for 6 hours.
Cute and he had the hots, is what she said?
Bananas.
I'm hoping that. Well, it sounds like they went to dinner that same night too. I packed his wounds in my living room. Okay, hold on. He wrote to me and we went on a date that night. Yeah, hit it off great. Like I was in love with this guy. I packed his wounds in my living room. Went to all his post-op appointments, etc. We loved each other. He then started acting weird. Whenever he would drink, he would threaten to kill himself. I thought it was just PTSD. So he got help. I loved him and the nurse in me wanted to help him. It happened again. He jumped out of a moving car after we left the party. Ironically, met my now husband that night.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. So after dealing with this emotional wreck for months, I find out I'm pregnant. He says he doesn't want to be with me and I need to get an abortion. I told him that I was fine on my own and I didn't need him. He went psychotic. He ran to my nightstand, grabbed my gun, put it to his head, loaded and safety off, and said that he would kill himself if I didn't get an abortion.
Jesus.
You don't want to have I mean, depending on how you feel about abortion, like, but is that really somebody you want to be tethered to for at least 21 years? 22
For
years.
real. God.
Yeah, I agree to do it.
Heavy.
Yeah, I agreed to do it so he wouldn't. Screamed at me that he didn't believe me. I called 911. The cops came and took him to the hospital. He came back to my house later that night and it was super awkward. He stuck around for another 2 weeks, never spoke about my pregnancy. Then I came off night shift one night and he was gone, just gone. Never spoke to him again. Fast forward 2.5 years, my now husband adopted my beautiful girl.
So wait.
So she did have the baby.
She did have
the baby, and he just disappeared.
So she did. So
yeah,
he disappeared,
She
and then
she says it's been 2.5 years. This man is still just out there lurking in the.
I'm saying, is
in the
he
night.
alive? You could check his Snapchat location.
yeah,
Not that much.
you can check it once.
an avid Snapchat user. I'm just kidding. I don't even know how to use it anymore.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So she had the baby.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's again, that's a very vulnerable point in someone's life where you're filling a void and
You know, there is an element to this of like, he's kind of in a vulnerable position as like he's in the you know what I mean? Like there's also a weird twist to all these like stories of kind of like
There's two sides.
there's two sides.
for sure.
And I'm not saying she's wrong or anything like that. I'm just saying like sometimes it's good to be aware that like a lot of patients I've been in the hospital are not their usual selves, I'm sure.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So maybe not a good time to take them home and bandage them up and
In your living room.
In your living room.
and then but
Cut it out. I'm not doing wound care in my living room.
That's
No.
you know, I'm picturing like the scene from what's that movie, like Ghost or something? There's like candlelight, and she's just packing these dudes. He's grimacing slightly.
Dude,
I don't know.
man. I tell my friends are asking me to look at rashes or something. I don't mean this in a bad way. I say, if I'm not getting paid, you're not getting saved. I will not be touching your rashes. I will not be doing extra shit for you. Like, no. Once I leave the hospital, I am not a nurse anymore. Don't ask me to do it.
It's crazy how unrealistic they are when it comes to shit like that too.
Yes. Like I got this really weird, like large pimple right at the top of my ass crack. Can you take a look? I'm like, we got dinner once 4 months ago. Like I don't. I'm gonna pass.
It's like, hey, you're a nurse, right?
No.
You're a nurse, right? Tell me what this is now.
Like
you
people
know?
I haven't seen in years. Yeah. Like, hey, what do you think about this? Nah. So I'm not taking anyone home packing their wounds in my living room. I'll tell you that much.
Bro. Cut it out.
I gotta say though, the first time I read the story, I was kind of like, this is everything I hope for to be coming through my inbox.
Right.
I got the loaded gun and I was like, what?
You got a gun from your.
And then like
telenovela, man.
He jumped out of her moving car.
Yeah.
Cut it up. You had to
I
call
hope
the
that dude
police
got
on
help,
him,
man.
I hope
Yeah,
he did.
definitely.
Very, very ill.
And you know, just the ending of like, I came home one night and he was gone.
Just gone. Like just disappeared. That's wild.
Once again, like I recognize the fact that like the people who sent me these stories are people who are definitely going to be listening in. So I don't want to be.
And I was literally thinking, fuck, I just said my damn Instagram name. She's going to message me tonight like, you judgmental bitch.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You want to speak freely?
But I will say this
I was
is just
joking. That wasn't my Instagram name.
That's his Finsta.
Yeah.
Look, I think she learned her lesson. I think she knows.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a crazy story.
Yeah.
And it turned out well. Like,
Yes.
it did turn out well.
This next one's a pretty heartfelt, good story. So we're taking it back around from the wild ones. I was taking care of a patient in critical condition. We didn't think this guy was going to survive, and he did. I gotten to know the family pretty well. They knew I was getting married, so they gave me their business card and told me to call them so they could do my flowers for a good price.
Noted.
They owned a floral business. So I did. We discussed and they gave me a 50% off of the flowers. So it came down to about $10,000 worth of flowers for $5,000. I was ecstatic. The flowers were gorgeous. The day of my wedding, they surprised me with about $50,000 worth of flowers for us. And they sent me an invoice saying, "You saved my life. Balance due 0."
Such a good payment.
Wow.
That's really sweet. That's a lot of flowers.
And that's I was
shitload.
I was trying to imagine like
$50,000
what is
worth of
$50,000?
flowers? What the fuck is
I mean,
that?
What do you even do?
Flowers are very expensive.
Yes.
But still, like, that's a lot. It's a very
50
nice gift.
grand?
Yes.
I'm trying
That's
to
beautiful.
imagine what like weddings even look like.
They're all
I
expensive.
Nah, yeah, they're outrageous.
haven't been to one of those in a minute.
Nah, that's amazing. That's an amazing story. That's amazing. Like you really don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like who you're taking care of, and like, but that's amazing.
And the generosity, that's insane. Like,
Wow.
yeah.
Some people are appreciative of what we do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I know for us, it's always more fun to like talk about like the negative parts of our jobs or like that kind of stuff. But this is a good story.
No,
This
that's
is-
that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's dope.
Yeah.
So you can
Beautiful.
trust some of your patients. Like, they're not all like, I don't know.
Now, if
Kinda.
they had gone on a date with this
Yeah,
person,
yeah, yeah.
that's where
No, that's why I even said no.
we
to
would
me.
have thrown
I'm
a red
like,
flag on that one. But
And after I got married and he gave me the flags, I gave him a call.
right. You up?
exactly.
Oops.
We have one more story. I've been an RN 5 years now. When I was in my final year of placement as a nursing student, I was placed in a psychiatric hospital on a unit where patients must stay long-term, regardless of if they are recovering or acutely unwell. There was a patient on the unit that I had always felt this strange sense of familiarity with. I brushed it off at the time to maintain professionalism and was actually able to learn more about transference and use the topic for reflective practice assignment. When my placement was over, I moved on with my life, but at times I would still wonder what happened with this patient. One day, a few years after I graduated, found employment, and I moved to another city, I received a Facebook message. It was from the same guy, and he hadn't forgotten about me either. I panicked, but again, I felt like I already knew him somehow. I called the college and asked them if it was appropriate to respond to the message. They confirmed that it was okay, given that the time had passed, so I responded. Fast forward to today. We've been living together for 3 years, have 2 cats, and plan to purchase a house. I found the most caring, attentive, and respectful partner in the most unexpected and unusual place, and I would never take back my decision to engage in this friendship. My biggest struggle comes from the controversial nature of where we met. Most of the time, I lie about our story to my nursing and non-nursing friends because I'm fearful of judgment. As I develop my practice, I am confident that this couldn't or wouldn't be something that could ever happen again in my life with another patient. I have resigned to the understanding that I can never explain the feeling of comfort I had when I met my now boyfriend. It just feels like it was meant to be. I hope that one day I can openly share my story and feel that it is accepted.
Wow.
Yeah. I get the part about feeling judged because I can't imagine telling that story to my friends and being, if my friend's like, "Oh, how'd you meet your significant other?" I'd be like, "Oh, I was my girlfriend's nurse."
Because it kind of takes off like the privacy of them too, being like, "Oh, they were in a psychiatric." You don't want
That's
to throw
true.
that at them.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But also one of those stories I like reading. I was like, this is a nice story. But we also had that conversation a few weeks ago on the EB Eats page about soulmates. And this is a story that makes you kind of want to believe in that.
Right, where it's like, you know, and I've never had that experience where like I've wanted to contact or, you know, keep in touch with any of my patients, but it's the person saying like, you don't know until you know, until you feel it. And I'm like, okay, like I can't speak to that because I've never experienced that. So
Yeah.
I mean, psychiatry especially is a very touchy subject a lot of times, and it's very difficult because it's a different type of care and a different type of vulnerability. I keep bringing it back to the topic of vulnerability, but it's a very different type of vulnerability. And a lot of times, like I just wouldn't, for myself, want to be getting into a relationship. Like, I'm a hot mess. Like, I wouldn't want to be getting into a relationship with someone who I know is in that moment in their life really struggling.
Yeah.
Because I know I would fall into the role of, again, being that caretaker or feeling like I need to do everything for this person. Like, I know myself. So I know that wouldn't be healthy for me in any way.
Yeah.
it's again, yeah, I don't know.
So I wonder how much time passed, because she was like, it is like you said, a couple years later, and like she was responsible enough, I guess, to go back to ask her school like if it's okay.
For sure.
So like I wonder like the amount of time and how his life changed.
Right. Yeah. Again, that's different, right? Because she's not dating him in that moment or anything like that. So right. I mean, it could completely off of what I'm saying. Like he could be in a point where she doesn't need to take care of him. He's good to go. Like, you know.
Yeah, she didn't admit him that morning and discharged him.
Right. Yeah, he could be doing really, really well.
Pack his wounds that night.
I mean, he knew her name, but she never gave any of her information that we know of.
Right.
Yeah. But
no, I mean, the nurse is definitely not in the wrong. Like, she's done everything right.
Yeah, and he reached out to her.
Right. It's literally just that
soulmate thing.
Right. And it's that component of the
What does it feel like to
stigma.
have that kind of chemistry?
Listen,
to think about someone later.
I want to know, for real.
And then find them.
Years later.
And then have them like you too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
No, that's a cool story. Like,
It's amazing.
I mean,
story.
I definitely can't like judge her like in a crazy way at all. Like, that's amazing. I'm happy for her. You know, I'm happy that you were actually able to find some stuff like that. But it's just like me personally, I don't think I could take my mind there in a place. You know what I'm saying? To even be like that. But then again, you know, I don't know the chemistry that they felt. Like,
let me ask you guys a question then. Have you ever had a patient that you found attractive?
Yeah, I've had a patient that I found attractive before. But it's just like you.
You working kids? Okay.
Yeah.
Like, this is a trap.
Don't say anything, please.
What's his name from I'm Chris whatever from Dateline.
That's hilarious.
There's no podcast. This is all.
When I worked with adults, like it was all women, right? In eating disorders too. So it's like
I'm Chris Hansen.
Oh my gosh.
Right, like my patient populations are way out of what my eyes
I'll
on.
say yes then on my
On the
regular
female behalf.
Yeah.
But it's like I feel like that kind of falls into the same categories. Like I've also had coworkers that I found very attractive, but it's just like there's a separation. Like me personally, if you're a coworker, it's not happening. If you're a patient, it's not happening. If you're a patient's family member, it's
Maybe.
It could happen.
You know what I'm saying?
And he's wondering why his coworkers are giving his number out.
You know what I'm saying? But
His coworkers are like, no, Tony's down. He said he was.
but the thing is, but it's like, but patience though, it's like that's a level. It's like I feel like I already know a little bit too much about you. You know, it's like I've met you at a point, and it's like I've gotten to know you in a way that even your closest family members might not get to know you. Like I know the physical you, I know your body. You know what I'm saying? And it's like
Exactly what they want, man.
You know, I know that's what they want. I know that's what they want. But it's just like that right there. It's a little. Can't do it.
Have you had a patient like try to like talk to you and be like, hey, well,
yeah,
like,
for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, but it's usually like to be honest, the most patients that try to talk to me are really like the older women.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm telling you, like you hear some raunchy comment.
Yeah, because they have nothing to lose. They'll say anything. If I was a little
younger, I'd take you in that supply closet in there. You know what I'm saying? Like it's all types of crazy stuff. But as far as like somebody that I found attractive, not off the top of my head do I think, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And you know, I agree. It usually is some like old lady saying some wild stuff. But I think it's also just more acceptable to say like weird sexual stuff to male nurses. Actually, okay.
I'm
Okay.
gonna say no. I'm gonna say no to that.
No, okay. I'll say this. As a male nurse, no one expects you to be upset about it.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
I think you can come back to the nurse's station with that story and people will laugh, whereas people will be like, ooh, if a female nurse
and want
says it.
you know, and want to be like, hey, you know, I'll take this patient so you don't have to go back in there anymore.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just like when you're a male and then you talk about how somebody is like making advances at you and stuff like that, it's like it's kind of like swept underneath the rug. It's like they'll laugh at it. Oh,
even coworkers will do stuff that I'm just like, if I did half of that, I'd be
in HR yesterday.
Yeah, and once again, it's always some like 40, 50-year-old coworker like
and I'm talking about like get really handsy with you.
Like pinching my butt. I'm like,
literally, like
Your
touch
coworker?
Yes.
What? What? Oh, listen, that's something.
I can think of several instances where someone who was like, I'm just like, did you just
last week?
Oh my God.
Literally, it is that common. Like it literally happens all the time. And it's like you're kind of in a weird situation. I don't know about you, but it's like I feel like, bro, do I go to HR about this? Or
you can't.
It's like
I know it sounds ridiculous.
It sounds I'm not gonna go. But it's like, but then again, it's like I'm not really. It's like I kind of feel like, man, I'm not standing up for myself, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not. But then at the same time, it's just like you don't want to be
that guy.
Yeah. You know.
Because I'm telling you, I had a instance when I first started working. I won't give out too many details in case this person's listening. But no, I was like new in the ICU, and you know, there's a hierarchy in some of these places, and so there's a group of like nurses who are kind of like they're the most knowledgeable. They're still kind of like young and hip, but like also like in their 40s or like kids or whatever.
The Harvey Weinsteins of the unit.
Well, Tony said that, not me. But no, it's like they joke around, they say all this other stuff, and there was me and one other younger guy. We were like the two like younger male nurses on the unit. We both started up there around the same time. I remember they would say crazy shit to us, and it was like funny, and then sometimes I was kind of like, all right, man, stop, shit. And one time I remember I was leaning over the counter at the nurses station. Well, honestly, I would say it was only annoying when it just became the joke that they're like, you're going to talk about my butt? All right. Okay. How many more times do I have to fucking laugh at this?
Right.
Yeah.
But then the one time that I can't remember what was happening. I think, you know, when you're new and like report doesn't go well, your morning just starts kind of bad. Like I started my way through a terrible report, was feeling like a fucking idiot. And I remember I can't remember what I was doing, but I was just like at the nursing station, and they said something to me, and I just snapped. I just like was like, I can't remember what I said, but it just made it fucking worse. Like they didn't keep saying the same sexual stuff, but it was like they just would just roast my ass about like being sensitive or something. I was like, okay, well, and that's how I left that place. That's like my last memory of that place was like, awful. I had a patient one time who was close to my age. I think we're like 25, and she was in there for like a Crohn's flare up. And she was cute, but like at the same time, like I wasn't. And I remember she found me on Facebook, and she had like requested me, and I wouldn't accept it. But I was her nurse, and she kept asking me why I wouldn't accept that. I was just like, because that's weird, and like we're fine or whatever. But then after that shift was over, I guess she told one of the night shift nurses that she thought I was cute or something like that. And then I had her again the next day, and they told me in the morning. And then she knew someone had said something to me, so she started acting weird. And I started feeling kind of awkward. You know, she was having a lot of bowel movements because, and so I could tell it made her feel even more like, wow. Yeah, it was just not a good combination of things, and it's just not. Like in my head, I was like, "You did this. Like it's not my fault. Like
I showed up to work. That's all I did."
Yeah, like I was like, "This is awkward now, and it's not my fault." Like. You can't come in the hospital for something where you have to poop a lot and then be embarrassed when I'm
trying to hit on people.
Like
that's
and
not good
like
timing,
pooping things not your fault.
Timing.
But also don't say the crush part of things like that just makes it awkward.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I don't know what she expected to happen after telling that nurse that, and then I wasn't going to come in.
She knew that you were going to be there the next day.
Yeah, I think
was the nurse the charge that she told?
No, just some other young.
Oh yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah. I think she got too comfortable and said too much, and then the next morning they told me in report. And,
then regretted it the next day, big time.
Yeah, and every time I came to empty the bedside commode, it was like, hey, I know you poop, it's cool.
Look, we're comfortable with you there. Shit near me.
Most relationships don't get to this phase for like a year.
Yeah. Beautiful.
You got that Bobby and Whitney love, you know?
So if you're out there and you've had similar experiences, you've fallen in love with a patient or dated a patient or had a terrible experience after giving a patient your information. Oh, yeah. Also, if you're a patient, you've had a nurse that you fell in love with. Maybe you guys are currently married. Maybe you guys are living the dreams. Maybe this nurse broke your heart. You can always email me at nurselifern@nursespeak.com or through the website nursespeak.com. There's a spot to submit stories, and if you're interested in having your stories on here, that is the way to do it. Also, if you like this podcast and you would like to support this podcast, the best way to do it is to buy merch. We don't have any sponsors. This is all coming out of pocket. So buy some merch. Thank you guys for coming.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Dope.
Thank you guys for listening. Hope you tune in for the next episode. Make sure to check out the prompts if you would like your story to be on here. Till next time, this is EB.